You can listen to The Front on your smart speaker every morning. To hear the latest episode, just say, play the news from The Australian.
From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Friday, August 23. Unions are turning on the Albanese government with the powerful Electrical Trades Union to withhold more than $1 million in donations to the Labor Party. That's after the government forced the construction union into administration, following allegations of corruption and misbehaviour. Aged care is about to get a lot more expensive after the collapse of negotiations in Canberra. Some self-funded retirees entering a nursing home will have to spend $40,000 more on the cost of care. There's a corporate sex scandal, allegedly, right at the top of one of our most significant retail companies. And they're fighting to keep it all secret. Today, the moment our journo put some very awkward questions to a CEO fighting allegations of impropriety.
Good morning, Anthony. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Good.
This is The Australian's retail reporter Eli Greenblatt, and he's interviewing one of the most intriguing figures in Australian business today, Anthony Heraghty, the boss of a company called Super Retail. They've just announced some great annual results, which is why they've, I suspect reluctantly, granted Eli an interview. But Eli doesn't want to talk about the results, at least not yet.
It's a record result and the dividends are up, but as I'm sure you can realise, there are other issues going on at Super Retail which I need to ask you about, and then I'm happy, of course, to turn to the results.
You can almost feel Anthony Heraghty wincing.
Allegations of really what looks like, from the outside, a toxic workplace environment, bullying, harassment, other issues I'm sure that you know about and you've read about. What do you make of those comments and the scandal that's now swirling around Super Retail Group?
Yeah, Eli, I appreciate you got to ask the question. I can't comment on that. That's subject to a court proceeding. It's in the statement of claim. It would be prejudicial to our position to sort of start to answer those allegations in the public square.
I'm sorry to ask this, but I have to. Are you currently in a relationship with Jane Kelly?
It's going to be the same answer, Eli, as we walk around the grounds on this, I'm afraid.
He said it's going to be the same answer, Eli. Now, Eli and I have both interviewed a lot of CEOs. Take it from me, this is a toe-curlingly awkward question to have to ask. But Eli doesn't flinch.
But, I mean, whether or not you're in a relationship with Jane Kelly, that's not a subject to court proceedings, and that's a personal relationship. You can't comment on that?
No, Eli, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
No, I know.
That issue is attached to statement of claim that's going to be subject to a public hearing. We'll hear all about it in due course.
If you didn't catch that, Anthony Heraghty said that's attached to a statement of claim that's going to be subject to a public hearing. We'll hear all about it in due course. Oh, yes, we will. In fact, this story is already going off in the boardrooms and newsrooms. You might not have heard of Super Retail, but you've heard of the brands it owns.
Keep it running super with Supercheap Auto and the best performing oils.
Whatever code of footy you're into, Rebel Sport have got you covered.
If this was a film, the jacket would probably start to rip at this point.
Yeah, but this is a Mac pack.
Ah, backpack.
And the story of what's going on behind the scenes is seriously wild. Eli, I've just been listening to your interview with Anthony Heraghty. Oh, it was awkward.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
These are not the kinds of interviews you normally do with CEOs, are they?
No, it's not the type of questions I normally ask when speaking to a CEO about his personal life, relationships, bullying and harassment, but that's what's happened at Super Retail to overshadow what was actually very good results for the financial year because of this kind of scandal swirling around the company, swirling around the CEO in particular since April.
Yeah, do you think he was expecting you to ask those questions, or would he have been hoping that he would get away with talking about the prices of wrenches and basketball hoops?
Yes, I think he knew, and I think he was prepared. He's got some pretty experienced and high-priced PR people advising him, and I think they knew that although there is some interest in how his stores are going, most of the answers were, look, I can't comment because it's before the courts, which is true, it is before the courts. But I think there were some issues he could talk about. He decided not to, but he did point to the very good results Super Retail had, I think, as evidence to say, well, we're not distracted, our management's not distracted, we're getting on with the business.
In fact, yes, there was a moment when he said to you, look, we're on the tools and this is the proof.
Yes. And those numbers do speak for themselves. So I think if there was any issue or concern about a consumer backlash, because what's going on, it hasn't happened. The consumer, is restrained. There is a cost of living crisis, but their retail operations seem to be doing pretty well. They've got positive sales growth, and that's across categories that are fairly discretionary.
Who is Jane Kelly, and why does it matter whether or not Anthony Hegarty is or was in a relationship with her?
Yes, I mean, it's becoming a bit like a soap opera, or as one investor called it a few weeks ago, it's a bit like Married at First Sight. It is a bit of a train wreck. Jane Kelly was the former head of HR for Super Retail Group, so a very powerful, very important position, very important executive on the team. And there are allegations, and these are untested allegations, which are going before court, that she was in a undisclosed relationship with the CEO, and that was not disclosed to the board. That creates a whole lot of corporate governance problems, given the importance of HR, given the importance of Jane Kelly's role, given her oversight somewhat of the CEO and his oversight of her, that they were allegedly in a secret relationship. Now, this has all come out because two of the most senior female executives at Super Retail, ex-executives, one, the former chief legal officer, very important position. The other one, a co-company secretary, became whistleblowers. One of them was sacked. They've then launched action. They launched action in the Fair Work Commission, where they made a string of allegations that the CEO, Mr. Hegarty, and Jane Kelly were in an undisclosed affair, that allegedly the CEO misused the company travel budget to further that affair, that there was harassment and bullying going on. There was staff complaints, nothing was done. There were whistleblower complaints, nothing was done. That the board was told allegedly of this affair between the CEO and the head of HR, nothing was done. And that also, and what came out a few weeks ago, that allegedly that when Jane Kelly, the former head of HR, took a redundancy, that the CEO intervened personally to help her get a better redundancy package than maybe she could have got. But when she was made redundant, she was immediately then rehired, allegedly as a consultant, to advise who the next chairman of the company should be. And the problem with that, Claire, is that you've then got the situation, again, allegedly untested for the moment before the court, that the woman who was claimed to be having an affair with the CEO was then advising the chairman who should be the next chairman, that chairman being the boss of the CEO.
Back to Eli, Anthony, and the very awkward interview.
What do you make of the allegations that this relationship was hidden from the board, that members of your executive team complained about her behaviour, nothing was done, she was protected because of the relationship, that you intervened personally to give her a better redundancy than she deserved when she left?
Yeah, again, that's what will be set out in the company's defence in due course.
Hegarty just keeps on blocking and Eli just keeps on grilling.
But it must be a distraction. It must be, I don't know, in some ways, look, I don't know, embarrassing, hurtful, I don't know. But, these allegations are out there. They're in the public domain, the ones I've mentioned. Also, allegations of harassment and bullying, excessive workloads, a high turnover in some of your executive departments.
No comment from Anthony Hegarty. Yeah, I think it's probably fair to draw from his lack of comment and the fact that these proceedings are underway that Super Retail Group is defending this, though. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. They actually, Super Retail, came out and in a way outed themselves in April. This is when the scandal began, when we first learned about it, because in April, Super Retail made an announcement to the ASX revealing that they were now the subject of a potential legal case that could cost up to $50 million and that these allegations were being made. And they listed those allegations. So this has been playing out in the public square for a few months and they deny it. At the time in April, the company, Super Retail, said they investigated these claims and found there was nothing in them. So the CEO has kept his job. The company keeps on going. And they're going to defend the action and are fighting the action in court even today, where they appeared before Justice Michael Lee in the federal court. So they're denying it and they're defending it.
Coming up, a surprise reappearance from a superstar judge. We'll be back after this break. I spoke to Eli on Thursday, just after he'd stepped out of a federal court hearing. You were covering that hearing along with lawyers for News Corporation, that's the parent company of The Australian. What were our lawyers in there to argue?
Yes, this is a kind of a side part of a very lengthy and complex story, but also an important part of the story. So Rebecca Farrell was the former Chief Legal Officer for Super Retail Group, a very important role, the most important kind of legal officer within the company. She was sacked earlier this year. She claims to be a whistleblower and she made many of the allegations that we know about today. Now, she issued to the court a few weeks ago her statement of claim, about 100 pages, where she listed the history of her allegations, what happened inside Super Retail. Now, as non-parties, the media, we can access that statement of claim, and we did attempt to access that statement of claim. But there were parts of that statement of claim that were redacted, that were blacked out, that we couldn't see. And this revolves around this allegation that Super Retail Group, after some weeks of negotiations, entered into a settlement with Miss Farrell over her allegations, over her whistleblower statements, and over her eventual departure from the company. Now, the details of what's in that settlement offer we can't see, are being blocked from us for the moment. And the company, Super Retail, doesn't want us to see what's in there. So our lawyers were in court today and they were in court last week arguing before Justice Michael Lee. And yes, that's the same justice who presided over the Brittany Higgins case. Our lawyers were arguing before the justice that given our court's strong belief in open justice, that we should be able to see those redacted paragraphs, that we, the media and the public, should be able to see what was in that alleged settlement, what were the details of that deal that was done. And so that's what we were fighting for in court today. Eventually, after an hour or so, it was decided by Justice Michael Lee that he would lift the suppression, that non-parties, the media, could see what's in that settlement. However, that's been frozen for the moment until October 1st as Super Retail perhaps seek to appeal that decision because they're fighting that.
Justice Michael Lee made it clear during the very famous Bruce Lemon versus Network 10 and Lisa Wilkinson case that he believes in open justice. He had the whole trial streamed live on YouTube. All the documents were put online as soon as they were tendered. It's interesting that you say there's a possibility that Super Retail is going to appeal today's decision. Do you think they might be buying time and there's going to be some sort of settlement here?
Yes, they could be, and it does give them time, and the lawyers would know, of course, what's going on in that and the negotiations, because meanwhile the court case of Rebecca Farrell, the former Chief Legal Officer, versus Super Retail Group goes on and will go into stages of document discovery and lodging more documents with the court. So it does give the lawyers time. Super Retail is running up a very large legal bill fighting this suppression order over, it's really a page of wording in that statement of claim. It's maybe a dozen points in that settlement, alleged settlement. So why are they fighting it? What is in there that they don't want us to see? That's what we want to know. And I suppose the more they fight it, the more we are fighting that we want to see it.
Management misbehaviour is definitely the theme of the moment, Eli. Even today, there are scandals raging in hospitality, in our own sector media, of course in politics, about the way employees are treated by their bosses. What about retail and the sector that you cover so closely? Is this a sector, do you think, where there are throwbacks to kind of old-fashioned behaviour that wouldn't be tolerated these days? Speaking generally, of course, and not about super retail.
Yeah, speaking generally and not about super retail, absolutely. It is a problem. And we saw it during COVID where people would get very angry in the supermarket aisle and at checkouts and abuse a lot of staff. A lot of them are young women. It is a very female-dominated industry, especially at that kind of service end where you're dealing directly with consumers, with shoppers. So there's a lot of abuse there. And there is, unfortunately, a lot of instances of bad behaviour within organisations where you do have a lot of women at the lower ends of the corporate hierarchy, but at the higher ends, quite male-dominated. We've seen a few cases play out in public and in the courts where this has happened, and it is shocking for everyone to see because, retail is a very large employer and it is awful.
Eli Greenblatt is a senior business reporter with The Australian. The case continues. Thanks for joining us on The Front this week. Our team is Kristen Amiot, Leah Tsemaglu, Jasper Leek, Josh Burton, Tiffany Dimmack and me, Claire Harvey.